Okay, we're going to begin our regular business meeting. Is there a motion to bring us out of closed session?
Yes, sir. I move that this council certify by a recorded vote that to the best of each councilor's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, can we vote, please? The motion passes 5-0. We'll begin our business meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. Are there any announcements?
Mr. Mayor, I think we should not allow the moment to go unnoticed that the Charlottesville High School girls basketball team is district champs, and wish them good luck in regionals and states and everything else.
They won the quarterfinals
Come-
over the weekend, 71-40. The next game is Wednesday at 6 p.m. at CHS.
Undefeated, and that is
Undefeated,
quite
that's
a feat in this area.
25-0 regular season.
Yes. So, yes, yes. Thank you, Laura, for bringing that. Yes. Are there any other recognitions or proclamations? Can't remember. I didn't think we had any. So we made some appointments in closed sessions for different boards and commission. I think, Brian, you had agreed to read those off for us.
Yes. For the Charlottesville Economic Development Authority, appointing Mr. Barnhart and Mr. Cawthon. For the Historic Resources Committee, Julie Basic. For the excuse me, for the Human Rights Commission, Charlie Burton. For the JABA Board, Mr. Brew, John DeArth, and Elaine Phillips. For the Sister City Commission, Salvatore Maschella. And for the Planning Commission, Betsy Rutger.
I'll second those nominations.
Again, any discussion? If not, can we vote? Thank you. Thank all of the applicants for that. It's really, there's still a lot of other openings, but we really appreciate individuals, willing to volunteer and get back in the community in that manner, the different boards and commissions. So thank you all very much. Ms. Thomas, please read the consent agenda.
Number 4, minutes, December 5th, draft Development Code public hearing, December 13th, special meeting work session, December 14th, special meeting work session. Number 5, resolution to appropriate opioid abatement funds, $45,073, second reading. 6, resolution to appropriate additional COVID homeless emergency response program grant award, $16,636.84, one of 2 readings.
We'll now take public comments regarding the items on the consent agenda item, just read by the clerk. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I would so move.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Okay, can we vote, please? Motion passes 5-0 to adopt the consent agenda. Mr. Saunders, is there a report from the city manager's office?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. A few items just for public benefit as well as partial updates to council. 2 things in regards to infrastructure. The Belmont Bridge As many of you, as you travel over it more recently, are beginning to see that it is coming to an end. The construction process is coming to an end. The new traffic signals are now up, and the old lights and mast arms have been removed. There's going to be some work being done on the sidewalk on the team pavilion side, which is going to cause everyone to shift to that to the alternate side while that work is getting done. That shift is supposed to happen sometime next week. Once that is done, then we'll begin additional work that'll lead us into March, which is when some utility work will begin to happen. But the project is slated to be done middle of June. So that is great news for us to be able to see that that project is coming to an end and the Belmont Bridge will be finished around that time. Also, in the infrastructure space, a notice to proceed has been issued in regards to the construction of the new bypass fire station. That's an ongoing project that we've been working on getting the details. It's a $7.5 million project. Substantial completion should be finished in March of next year, although there'll be about a month and a half of where installation of CCTV and equipment and various things and some training and testing has to happen. But we look forward to May of 2025 as to when the fire department would actually take use of that building. So it's not a long time when you think about building a fire station and putting it into service. And then the last thing I'll just share is that I have finalized your work session schedule. You'll get that tomorrow. I didn't post it on the website, so I didn't want to pass it out to you without posting it on the website at the same time. So we'll get that distributed to you tomorrow. This is a new thing that we're doing and making sure that we can plan out work sessions for as far into the year as we possibly can and make those available to the public so that you all have the opportunity to see what council will be deliberating on in work sessions over the course of the year. The goal is for us to try to plan out and schedule these various discussions and to time them. It gives staff an opportunity to time some of their action items that they bring to coincide with these items coming up on your work sessions. Better planning is what I'm striving for, so that's the last of what I have for you this evening.
Thank you.
Can I ask one other infrastructure question?
Sure.
Do we have any news on what's happening at High Street and Park Street?
High Street and Park Street, the General District Court.
Well, where the traffic has been blocked since last week because of the
Well,
power failure and things
initially it
blowing
was
up.
power failure because there was a truck that hit a pole that took out the electricity service in the
Right.
area. That's been fixed. Now the road is closed because they're pouring concrete.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all concrete at this point.
Okay,
I'll have a future update as to how that schedule is going
Thanks.
pretty soon.
Yeah.
I was going to blame Ting still.
No need.
So we're now at the Community Matters. There are 6 pre-registered speakers, leaving 10 slots for additional speakers on Community Matters. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. We'll now open the floor to the pre-registered speakers. The first speaker is John Ertl with the, yeah.
Good evening. On February 4th, ATU members at CAT and Pupil Transportation unanimously ratified their first union contract by a vote of 39-0. This is a huge milestone for workers' rights in the city and for our public transit system. We applaud, at ATU, we applaud the city's leadership for giving its employees this opportunity and also for having management's negotiating team settle a fair contract with the union. I understand that the other recognized unions have also reached agreements with the city, which is similarly great news. And additionally, we're enthused to hear that the city's blue-collar workforce is seeking to join Teamsters Local 29. However, the job of making sure that the city's workforce has the fundamental human right to be able to freely join a union and collectively bargain is not yet finished. I'm referring specifically to the workers at Jaunt. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires that any mass transit system in the country also provide equivalent transportation services to the disabled. Throughout this country, this so-called paratransit service is sometimes run in-house, and sometimes it's contracted out to a third party, usually for the sole purpose of saving money by reducing wages and benefits. In Charlottesville, we contract out our paratransit service, this vital city transportation service, to Jaunt, the regional paratransit operator. After being inspired by the workers at CAT, who successfully joined the ATU and unionized, a supermajority of the workers at Jaunt also signed union cards, indicating their desire to unionize. The union then asked the Jaunt Board of Supervisors to recognize the union and pass a collective bargaining resolution that would enable those workers to unionize and bargain in contract, just like we did at CAT. Jaunt, however, refused. In their response to the union, their board of directors claimed that they're not covered by the enabling legislation that allows public workers to unionize, and furthermore told us flat out that even if they were covered, they would not voluntarily agree to allow their workers to have union rights. It's truly an unfortunate decision that they decided to repudiate the will of the supermajority of the workforce who wanted to unionize, and sadly, it's one for which we have no real recourse. But in the end, their short-sighted refusal to grant union rights will only harm Jaunt as they lose employees to CAT. But these workers still deserve the right to join a union, just as much as the city's direct employees do. That is why we are calling on the city's leadership to explore ending the contracting out of paratransit service to Jaunt and instead running it in-house with unionized city employees. Jaunt could certainly still exist. The remaining other 6 jurisdictions can certainly pool their resources to provide rural transit for their jurisdictions. But City Council's taken a principled stand to make it city policy that the city workforce should have union rights. And that should also extend to city servants performing Charlottesville's paratransit work. Jaunt, on the other hand, does not share these values. And therefore, it is inappropriate for the city to continue to contract out this service to them if they're going to refuse to honor their employees' wishes to unionize. There is no legitimate reason to deny these hardworking public servants the right to have a union when all the other rank-and-file public servants in the city will have such rights. As such, we again respectfully request that the city explore ending the contracting out of paratransit service. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sally Hudson?
Thank you all for your time this evening. I just wanted to say thank you for the support that you expressed this evening for moving forward with a ranked choice ordinance, and especially to add my thanks to Jim and to Taylor for all of the work that they have invested in the details. I just wanted to pick up a handful of loose ends that came up in that conversation. First, I want to thank Mayor Wade for making the point that while it's great that our election administrators are thinking about all of that nitty-gritty, how we talk about that with the public is a separate project. And we are fortunate that there are national technical assistance providers like the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center that provide media training for public officials and for candidates so that all of you and anybody who's running can get practice talking about this, and we'll all be singing from the same sheet of music as we're educating the public. I also want to thank Councilor Pinkston for highlighting the still looming loose end about a hand recount. And the great news is that the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center is also a treasure trove of examples from across the country of cities and jurisdictions that have answered that question. In particular, they've highlighted for me that East Point, Michigan is a community that matches Charlottesville in its multi-winner at-large races with a similar tech setup that we have, and they've pointed us in that direction to think about solving that question. So I think we have some leading lights there on that point. I especially want to thank Councilor Oshrin for helping us clarify this distinction between certifying and approving software, because I know that that was a bit of a quagmire for a little while. If I can add just a little bit of clarity there about what's moving forward in the General Assembly versus what is currently state code. What's ambiguous right now is that state code mandates that the state certify what's called a voting system, which years ago used to be the catch-all name for all of the tools that election administrators use. But since that code was written, new tools have emerged like electronic poll books or tabulation software that haven't yet been added to state code to mandate certification. And so what the bill that's moving forward in the legislature right now would enumerate these new tools that have emerged and say that the state must also certify those. But in the absence of that clarity, ELECT is voluntarily certifying the software. So what the legislation would do is mandate that they do what they're already doing, which is approve the software. And as Councilor Oshrin noted and as state attorneys have confirmed, approve and certify are synonyms in this hunk of state code. So all of you have an email from me with the approval specifications that the state granted last May. And for our engineer on council, that's 100 plus pages of technical specifications and certificates, so you can go down those details to your heart's content. With that, I just want to say thank you all. I know this has been a long project. I know there's a lot more to come, but we're very fortunate to have this team assembled to work on it.
Thank you so much. James Groves.
Good evening. I'm James Groves, city resident and co-chair of the Seaville 100 Climate Alliance. Recently, Kimley Horn recommended that CAT acquire 28 new buses, 2 electric, 3 hydrogen, and 23 diesel. If their plan's implemented, zero-emission buses will constitute less than 18% of new purchases and 9% of CAT's overall fleet by 2030. Evaluating this proposal in light of climate change, I conclude that Kimley Horn has set the bar too low. Consider that the consulting firm ING has forecasted that by 2030, 33% of European transit buses will be zero emission. 33%, not 18, not 9. Separately, in 2022, U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm signed an international memorandum of understanding stating that the U.S. would seek to ensure that 30% of U.S. bus sales are zero emission by 2030. 30%, not 18. So, nationally, a Democratic Party president has set a goal of 30% zero-emission bus sales by 2030. Locally, Charlottesville City Council, comprised of 5 members of the Democratic Party, is being asked to endorse a plan to purchase just 18% zero-emission buses this decade. Are you prepared to dismiss the Biden administration's guidance? If Charlottesville were to fall in line with national and international transition trajectories, it would acquire 9 or 10 zero-emission buses this decade, not 5. I'm also uneasy about Kimley Horn's proposed mix of zero-emission buses. Under their proposal, CAT staff would be asked to operate and maintain 3 different technologies: diesel, electric, and hydrogen. Throughout the planning process, Charlottesville's transit director and city manager have articulated system reliability as the top priority. Yet juggling a much larger operation composed of 3 platforms, including 2 with which the city has no experience, seems unlikely to deliver trusty service for those dependent upon CAT. Finally, I sense that Charlottesville is losing sight of its 2030 climate goal, a 45% decrease of greenhouse gas emissions from 2011 levels. Kimley Horn's recent presentation highlighted that target as a project goal and then proceeded to unveil a proposal that would increase carbon emissions through 2035. Additionally, at your last council meeting, City Manager Sanders' slides listed the city's 2050, but not its 2030 climate goal. That speaks to mindset. Our path to net zero matters. Intermediate emissions need to drop quickly. Accepting higher emissions for a decade or more, as long as we reach the desired endpoint, constitutes bad policy. Please get serious and prioritize climate action. Bump up the zero emission target to 9 or 10 electric buses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grove. The next speaker is Robert McAdams.
My name is Robert McAdams, and I live at 2211 Williamsburg Road, Charlottesville, 22901. A 15-minute walk to bus stops for routes 5 and 7. I am retired and live on a fixed income. With increasing ridership, a key goal for Charlottesville area transit, I am one of the people you need to convince to ride the bus instead of driving my old car. The alternate fuel study you are considering includes a pilot study of 2 electric buses, but it also includes the purchase of many diesel buses. This expansion of the CAT diesel fleet is intended to increase ridership by reducing wait times between the buses. If that increase in ridership does not happen, the result will only be many more greenhouse gas emissions. This brings the issue back to me and how to convince me to ride the bus. I need dependable scheduling so that I can plan my travels. I also need to know that I am reducing greenhouse gas emissions by riding the bus. Tonight, my asks of you are, 1, during this year, 2024, make real preparations for the 2025 pilot study for battery electric buses. Number 2, conduct the pilot as an earnest attempt to solve problems specific to Charlottesville. Battery electric buses are proven technology generally. Number 3, if the pilot study has positive results, then immediately buy more electric buses instead of diesel buses. Being able to ride a zero-emission electric bus would convince me to do so. You could build an ad campaign on CAT protecting the future with electric buses now. I am asking you to do everything you can to achieve your goal of a 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Tonight, I rode bus routes 5 and 7 to get here, and I expect to ride them back home. It can be done. I urge you to do everything you can to meet that 2030 goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Nicholas Cole.
Evening, City Council. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your resounding support for ranked choice voting. I know Taylor and the Electoral Board had done a ton of work getting in all the details right, and thank you guys so much for asking your super diligent questions, making sure all of our fine details are ironed out. Because we don't just want ranked choice voting to happen, we want it to happen well and smooth and seamlessly. And that's one thing I'm here to offer is actually as a group of coalition of people who support ranked choice voting in the community, we're happy to support, help educate people, and that's actually something we've already been doing, having spoken to hundreds of members of the community. 1, to educate, and then 2, to hear about their enthusiasm. So if you got more emails from people supporting it, that's probably why. As somebody who has served the nation, gone to the Naval Academy, served as a naval officer for 5 years, this is something that makes me exceptionally proud to have done that service, and proud to be an American as we continue to form a more perfect union. You know, when the founders first set up the nation, it wasn't meant to be perfect. It was meant to move us in the right direction. And ranked choice voting is one of those things that move us in the direction to become a more perfect union. With ranked choice voting, people will actually be able to vote for who they really want and not feel like they have to play a game. It brings more powers to the voters and more choices to them. It better represents us, and it incentivizes coalition building and more positive campaigning. So again, thank you so much for your resounding support, and I'll be seeing you as I continue to support you into implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Marta.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's good to see you all, and thank you for giving me a few minutes to share with you. Ms. Thomas handed out my handout on impact stories, which I'll leave for you to enjoy later. I'm not going to read them to you, but I think they help make our numbers come alive. And the last 3 pages are particularly impactful when you look at the insurance counseling story and the 2 community resource stories. They talk about people in Charlottesville and what we've done to try and help them. And sometimes those are harder and longer stories to tell than we usually do. As you know right now, Weldon Cooper's just released new census data, and that's shown that in our region, we're up to 24% of people over the age of 60. So even since the 2020 census, that continues to grow. And that's because, as we know, people love living here. They age in place here, they don't move away, and yet other people move back here or move here to retire. And so we are going to continue to be an area that really appeals to those in the over 60 age group. Likewise, over 85 is living longer, and so we're going to see more people with probably greater needs than what we've worked with in the past. And we know that with the numbers increasing, more people are living alone. And as we all saw during COVID, isolation is a strong factor in cognitive, physical, and emotional decline. So it's really important to be able to have services and support, as those examples show, where people can come together and get the kinds of services they need. I just wanted to take a minute to also share with you a new program that we're doing through a grant with TJPDC. They have started to look at being the mobility manager, which is a really important role, I think, to have within the planning district. We've been subcontracted to be the mobility specialist. That's a natural adjunct to our senior helpline. We'll be a second person that will sit in the same office, will take calls, look at helping to share with people what their transportation options are, helping them get signed up for it, afterwards assessing their satisfaction, and then tracking what gaps in the service exist. We all know there are gaps, but it's always been anecdotal. When I get asked, are all seniors getting where they need to go, the answer is no. But when you ask me how many of them or what percent, I can't give you that except to say it's a lot, and that's not very helpful. So we look forward to working with TJPDC to maybe better direct and help us figure out what are the points that will make our transportation system so much better for everybody, not just seniors. So I appreciate your time tonight, and I appreciate all the support you give JAVA throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's one of the boards that I serve on as city council rep, and it's a pleasure to serve on it, the impact of the work we do in your leadership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
So that was the end of our pre-registered speakers. We have opportunity for 10 more speakers. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to speak? You can come up, but I'll recognize you when you raise your hand, but please.
Hi, my name is Dr. Emily Yen. I'm a Charlottesville resident. I live at 506 Ridge Street. I'm speaking in support of exploring a study to move the paratransit services from Jaunt in-house in addition to the reasons that John Ertl already mentioned. I also want to point out that moving these services in-house is going to allow you to supervise the quality of these provisions of services much better. These Jaunt transports physically disabled, vulnerable adults, and so by moving it in-house, you can be able to control the quality of better and just to ensure that they're getting high-quality service. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Peter Gates, Charlottesville resident and Assistant Secretary of SEAL 100, environmental organization in the community. Just want to add a few points to those made by some of the previous speakers about the alternative fuels transit study, that issue. There are many more ambitious plans and plans in progress, both regionally and nationally and internationally, to electrify bus transit. Examples are the DC Circulator, the Montgomery County Ride-On, Alexandria Dash Buses, Fairfax County, a bit further afield, Frederick County, Maryland, Greenville, South Carolina. Los Angeles and Houston plan to totally electrify by 2030. Anaheim will soon be 90% electric buses. And just to put it in a global context, a previous speaker mentioned Europe. China is burning way too much coal, but as of 2022, 65% of their buses and trolley buses were electric. The second point I want to make is that whatever pace of the electrification program City Council decides on, the key thing for a successful transition is institutional buy-in. So this pilot study needs to be thoroughly done with a positive attitude. And finally, I'll address a vision of residential and work integrated living, which I think is something that society needs to strive for, but it's going to be a generational, multi-generational task. And climate change is really hitting home in this generation. If you look at the Atlantic sea surface temperatures in the main development region for tropical cyclones are already at July levels. And so mass transit is going to be part of any social endeavor in the next several decades, and the type of bus is really important unless you assume you're going to max out ridership on all the expanded bus schedules. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Is there any, Tom?
Thank you for the opportunity. Good evening. I'm Tom Olivier. I live in Albemarle County, but I'm one of these people that thinks the city and the county are actually one community. I want to endorse the call for urgent acquisition of electric buses by the city. We live now at the beginning of a climate emergency, one that scientists say if we don't take bold action to transform our societies soon, we will endanger the future of younger generations, students who are in our schools right now. And you have the opportunity today or this year to take a bold step with the electrification of the city public bus fleet, and I just hope you will do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Gentleman in the back.
Good evening, Mayor Wade, councilors, thanks for your time. My name is Brett Jones. I'm a resident of Charlottesville City, and I'm thrilled to hear of your support of ranked choice voting today. I'm just here to thank you for your indication of that strong support. Myself, I'm also an engineer, Mr. Pinkston. I'm an electrical engineer. I specialize in machine learning, so my job is to find patterns in the world. These days, I work in cancer research at UVA. And what are a bunch of computer geeks doing working in cancer research? You can fairly ask. Well, we're looking for structure. We're looking for structure because everything starts with structure. Structure is what drives the system. It's what drives the outcomes. And in cancer research, we're looking for broken structure that produces broken outcomes. And when I hear people talk about politics today in this country, they say, why can't we have common sense solutions for climate or gun control or education, electoral reform? Why can't we have these things in this country that so many people agree on? Well, to me, it seems kind of obvious. It's the structure. The structure drives us to the outcomes that we see today. But councilors, although that structure is broken, I think we all agree that structure is broken, I don't believe that it's broken beyond repair. And I do believe that ranked choice voting is one of the few things that can make some difference, and we can actually do. It's a very small set of things like that. It's not a silver bullet, but it will move the needle. And we've seen this in Maine, we've seen it in Alaska. When people know their next election is ranked choice, it changes the way the leaders lead. And in our federal system, the states are the laboratories of democracy. I learned about the history of this in many of the early 20th century battles where the progressives gave us new reforms. Those happened in the states, not in Washington, D.C. And so the front lines to save this country are in the states, and in Virginia, the state lines, as you know, are all local. So I want to thank you for engaging in this struggle. We are going to move the needle. We're going to change the structure of this country. I'm thrilled that we're in this together. And I'm part of the coalition with Mr. Coe, and we are here for the long haul. If you guys need us, we're at your disposal. Any resources, we're plugged into a wide national network, and we're here for voter education and the challenges that we all know coming. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Any other speakers? Time, space for a few more. Thank you so much. We're now going with the action items. The first item is we're going to have Anthony Warren and Taylor Harvey Ryan.
Good evening, Mayor Wade.
Good evening.
Councilors, Ms. Thomas. I'm very excited to be before you tonight. I work with the Office of Community Solutions, and I am here to propose a path-breaking and potentially transformational opportunity to support the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank in the expansion of their cold storage capacity. It would be an opportunity that would benefit not only Charlottesville, but all of the 25 counties that are served by BRAFB. In short, BRAFB currently has a cold storage facility that basically a large refrigerator that has the internal storage capacity that's smaller than the average one-car garage in America. And Thank you. And so this refrigerator unit, it presents a number of challenges. It's old, which means that it's expensive. It's coming to the end of its rated service life. Every repair that needs to be made takes away from the operating capital that Rafferty has to support their beneficiaries. It is small, meaning that it's hard to navigate inside when you take the food pallets in, and most importantly, the limited capacity that they have for the storage often leads them to have to turn away donations of fresh produce. This opportunity would support a healthy produce initiative that they started several years ago by significantly expanding the capacity that they have to take in this food, process it, and then turn it around very quickly. One example, they had a truck pull up unexpectedly from one of the local national supermarket chains. And they had about 6,000 pounds of potatoes that they could donate. And Rafferty was only able to take a small portion of that because they did not have the storage capacity. For a variety of reasons, we have before us an opportunity to support the purchase and installation of a significantly larger cold storage unit for refrigeration purposes. We benefit from a number of factors in play here. One is that they installed a new freezer unit about a year ago that is much larger, and even though it's larger, it uses less energy to produce a much lower cold temperature than the current unit that they have, which is smaller and only needs to provide refrigeration services. I'm very excited to have here tonight some people from Rafferty, if I can introduce them. Anna Isro is their grants and stewardship manager. Katie, I just want to make sure I get this right. Ratzliff? Karen Ratzliff is the philanthropic, here, I should have my glasses on, Chief Philanthropy Officer, and Michael McKee, if we can, he would like to present a couple of comments about this opportunity.
Thank you and good evening. I'd like to just give a little perspective about why this need is so urgent at this point in time. The Blue Ridge Area Food Bank, as you may know, distributes food through a network of community partners, more than 200 of them across 25 counties in Central and Western Virginia. Last year, we distributed about 27 million pounds of food through these community organizations. That's enough for about 23 million meals, and about 30% of that food was fresh produce, which is becoming increasingly important as more people rely on pantries as a primary source of food and really turn to us not only for the food, but for something that will support their good health. What we are seeing today, though, is completely unprecedented and certainly unexpected. We're averaging about 153 visits to pantries across our network, 153,000 visits to pantries across our network every month. And that's about 20% higher than at the peak of the pandemic. It is about 50% higher than before the pandemic. And we reached an actual high of 173,000 in 1 month in October. What's driving it, of course, is the cumulative effect of inflation, especially in food, housing, and childcare. From a financial perspective, our fundraising priority, therefore, is food purchasing. Farmers and grocery stores are stepping up and trying to do more. Manufacturers along the mainstay for the food bank just are more efficient and produce less excess inventory available for food donation. Food drives account for only 1% of what we distribute. To give you a sense of what that means at scale, in 2019, the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank spent $1.8 million buying food for distribution. Last year, we spent $5.3 million buying food for distribution. And so when we look at this kind of capital expansion, there's a choice to be made. And the money that we would need to spend of our own on the expansion of our cold storage is money that we cannot spend on food purchasing. And the catch-22 here is that if we don't spend that money on cold storage, Charlottesville area residents miss out. They're not getting access to the fresh produce that others in different regions are able to because of sheer capacity constraints at our Charlottesville warehouse. And so we're really grateful that you all are considering our proposal. And our effort is just to make sure that our residents in this community, in this area, about half of whom self-identify as Black, Hispanic, or otherwise non-white, that they have equitable access to good nutrition. And that's at the heart of our proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did you have any?
Yeah, if
Oh,
I can
sorry.
walk you through some of the technical details. Next slide, please. So this is the full service area of the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. And in the dark green area, you see Charlottesville right in the middle. So I've learned a tremendous amount over the last couple of weeks working with the team from BRAFB. One of the most surprising things for me is that the Harris Street location, which is their central distribution hub for the eastern region in which we live, can provide food and produce to the other regions, but they can't provide fresh produce to Charlottesville simply because they don't have a place to store it at the USDA required temperatures. Next slide, please. And so, this,
just quickly, for the previous slide, so, are we, is everyone pooling in for this, or is City of Charlottesville paying for the whole thing, or how is that?
yes, so the proposal before you is to fund this cold storage expansion. It would be in full, and it would provide benefits primarily immediately to the Charlottesville community. Because one of the things I learned was it's basically a big food warehouse, but they get people because there's public transportation stops very nearby. It's on Harris Street. It's right near 250 Loop. It's very well located. It's right next to the Goodwill store or the Habitat store? Habitat store. So they have a variety of people who show up in person. And so they have taken some of their valuable interior space inside their main warehouse building and kind of created their own like little food pantry so that anybody who shows up in need walks away with at least something. That's not what the space was built for, but that's what they do. So our proposal is to use these funds that are available to us to benefit primarily the Charlottesville community, but it also provides ancillary benefits out to the extended network, largely because of the location. The location is ideal. It's right near the 250 bypass, which puts it in easy connection to I-64, Route 29, for a variety of reasons. It's incredibly well located. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay. Next slide, please. So as the recognition of fresh produce, fruits and vegetables has grown in the country, BRAFB launched this Healthy Pantry Initiative, and I just share a little bit of the information because it was a pre-existing initiative that they had going throughout their entire network and as part of their national food pantry work. Next slide, please. So specifically what we're talking about here is their 1207 Harris Street location. It is surprisingly active and productive for such a small space. This is the exterior view from Harris Street. Next slide, please. So this is the rear where the volunteers do their work, where the delivery trucks arrive to drop off their food. To the right is the building in blue, loading dock in the back, and then the refrigeration units off to the left. Next slide. Again, this is another view, and it shows you that as the trucks pull in, a huge amount of the work that is done by the staff and the volunteers and the produce and food that is offloaded from the delivery trucks is on their loading dock, the majority of which is uncovered at this time, and that'll become important later. Next slide, please. So here you have the two refrigeration cooling units that they have right now. To the left is the white structure is the freezer unit that they installed about a year ago. And to the right in the darker gray color is the current cooler unit. And we'll talk about some of the interior issues that it presents. Next slide, please. I'm going to go through these quickly. So this is the inside of the current cooler unit. You can see that the food pallet right there takes up approximately half of the space available inside the structure in width. What that means is in order to get the food pallets in and out, they lose valuable storage space needed to get the food in and out, meaning that they have to turn away these, donations. Next slide, please. This is the interior of the freezer unit that they installed about a year ago. The proposed unit that we are exploring would be almost the exact same model. It would be set at a much cooler temperature, but you can see on the inside that there's much more room. So their storage columns can be longer, they can use more of the height, and they don't have this space that's lost by having to maneuver their pallets. It looks kind of empty, but this is right because 2 or 3 days before I showed up to take these pictures, they had just distributed a huge amount of the frozen food out to their network. Next slide, please. So here's an exterior of the current refrigeration unit. It is, like I said, it was rated for 15 years. It is now over 14 years. You can see some of the buckling, and of note here along the bottom are the seals. It's basically a tilt-up construction, so the unit was delivered, the pieces were assembled, a frame was built, and then the pieces were lifted up and secured together. And so each of the horizontal lines are a seal, and on the bottom are seals. BRAFB has had to pay out of their operating expenses to replace the sealant in a number of places at significant expense because they have decayed over time, especially because they are the age and they're exposed to the elements. That'll become important.
We got it. It's getting old.
Yeah. So next slide, please. Here is the exterior of the door. So you see, as the unit was installed, there's a hard ceiling, but there's a cap across the top to kind of protect the unit. That has degraded significantly. I said, well, how much would it cost to replace just the covering? You see it doesn't provide coverage of the whole unit. And I can't remember what the price was, but it was shocking, just for the cap. You can see the hinges are kind of rusting, and again, the degradation of the seals along the bottom. Next slide, please. Again, the hinges, you see a lot of the rusting, point made. Next slide, please. Here are the new condenser units for the current unit. When I was there for about half an hour, I heard them pop on and off for about 2 minutes every 10 to 15 minutes. Next slide, please. The current condenser units for the refrigeration unit were on constantly. They did not cease operation the entire time I was there. They're very loud, and you can hear that it's probably the internal fans are uncalibrated now, so there's grinding noise and things. Replacement of those will be required relatively soon. They've received estimates of about $8,500 per unit just to replace the condensers. Next slide, please. Volunteers, they do great work. Next slide, please. Now, what we're proposing is to replace the unit, to help them rebuild the concrete foundation that is sagging in some places under the current cooler unit, so that it'll be much larger, be able to accommodate the new cooler. And then the roof that covers just the loading bay right now, where the truck is, we are proposing to extend that roof line out over the 2 new units. A combined investment for the 2 units will be at completion about $350,000. So we are proposing to use money to extend the roof just to cover the current units and the condenser units, move the condenser units under the cover to protect them from the sun and the elements, thereby significantly expanding their service life. As part of the cost sharing, BRAFB had long wanted to extend the roof to cover the loading docks to protect their staff and their volunteers, many of whom have to work out in the open all year round. Their work never ceases. So as part of the cost sharing, if we do this project, as part of the same piece, BRAFB will pay to have the red unit, the red area of the roof line extended. And that'll accomplish multiple goals with one investment. Next slide, please. This is an architectural rendering that was submitted as part of the bidding process of what the extended unit, so you'd have the 2 cooler units, city investment of CDBG funds would cover the left side, and BRAFB would cover everything. All their volunteers and staff would be able to work sheltered from the sun and rain and snow and sleet and whatnot. With that, I will make myself available for any questions.
Thank you very much. For someone who's over the last 20, 30 years volunteered there many times, that shelter for volunteers would be much appreciated. So, thank you. Questions?
So the specific amount of money that is being requested is 215? No, it's in here somewhere.
It's 215.
Yeah. 215. And this qualifies for CDBG money?
Yes.
Funding? I mean, it meets those criteria. I believe you if you say it does. I'm ecstatic to support this. I think it's a great, I think the fact that we're able to help ourselves and also help the network and to support our volunteers, I think it's a great project. I think you've done a very thorough job putting all this together, which I appreciate as well.
Yeah, and we got the presentation about CDBG at the 4 p.m. work session, and I think this kind of allocation is exactly the kind of allocations we should be making with CDBG: strategic, high impact, long-term impact, and directly benefiting working in poor people in our community. There's a lot of information in the staff report and appendices, but I think it was very informative, and I think it's a positive thing for our public to be able to learn and hear as much as possible about our decisions. I'll say that. And the only, one of the things that was just striking to highlight is some people may have the perception the food bank is for people who are unemployed or homeless, but it's just not the case. It's people who are working full-time jobs, in some cases multiple jobs, and 1 in 3 people in our city are food insecure, which is just striking. The only question I have is just one out of curiosity. This is reprogram money. Do you happen to know what was reprogrammed, in just that history of how it got reprogrammed?
Yeah, so that's all great questions. I would just add to kind of one of your noticings and what Mayor Wade mentioned. To my knowledge, the city has not made a direct investment in BRAFB, despite their vital role. So this is just a very powerful opportunity to chart a positive path forward, I think. I started with the city in December of 2022, so it's very difficult for me to speak about things prior to that. In the appropriation resolution, the approval and appropriation resolution, it spells out the 3 projects. I know one of them was the...
Page 50 of the packet.
Sorry, thank you. Was the Ridge Street Priority Neighborhood Sidewalk Project. It was mentioned that about $240,000 was allocated for that project, appropriated back in 20... It took a number of years, but I think the current listing in the finance system is 2022.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll be direct. I knew the answer, but it highlights that why we should not invest in capital projects because we can't deliver them on time. So that's the point. But thank you. I am fully in support of it, and I think this is a fantastic project and work, and again, exactly what we should be doing with CDBG.
Other comments?
And that's just to clarify that this is HUD money we would be spending on this.
Yes. There'd be no city money.
So it doesn't come from the city bucket?
No. It is HUD money that went completely through the citizen participation aspect of CDBG. It was all, the original funds were allocated through the competitive application process, careful and diligent review by the volunteer members of the task force, and appropriated for approved activities by council in the past. And for whatever reason, the funds were not fully expended on those activities. When I started, I went back through and kind of looked through the accounting system and identified these pockets of money, put the note aside, and then went through the development of the current program year activities. But we had this in the background. HUD has asked us on several occasions, what are we going to do with it? Some of the money comes from 2017. Long and short, we need to show them a reason that we are using this money for. Is a great opportunity. Almost by definition, the beneficiaries of BRAFI's work meet the LMI requirement. So there are a number of ways we could structure it for HUD through an area benefit, individual benefit, a variety of things. As part of the development process, I shared this with our program coordinator in HUD Virginia. They fully endorse it, they fully approve it. It's a fully eligible use for these CDBG funds, and it will provide an incalculable benefit, I think.
Thank you. Is there agreement to carry this to the, this item to the March 5th meeting for second reading and vote?
I'm fine with that, but could I just ask a couple questions?
Okay.
I'm looking at page 50, and it shows that there are three sources of funds that are being reprogrammed. One is from a CDBG fiscal year 2017 10th and Page project. What was that? Do we know?
I don't know. All I know is that as I was learning the federal system, I spent 20 years in K-12 education. I do a lot of research, and so I started looking through and wondering what is this money for? All those projects were approved by council, so I could dig up the staff memos.
My real question, I guess, is sort of getting at this problem of why we have been unable to spend the money. And it's almost less important to me what it was to have been spent for, and more important to me that here's something that was supposed to have been spent 7 fiscal years ago.
So, yeah, I mean, let's focus on this project. I mean, we can have a long work session or something on like how to streamline the CDBG process. I mean.
Well, the other question I had, looking at page 50, is I'm curious about the proposed revised appropriation of $25,705.78 and what that is, because as I add up the proposed reductions in the column next to it, it all comes out to $215,000. I can't figure out what the $25,705.78 refers to.
I'll let you answer that one, but I just want to, good evening, councilors. I just want to clarify Councilor Snook's question in terms of why do we have the remnants of this money. Like 10th and Page, we had a huge project in 10th and Page, the park, there, and there are other activities, so that is the leftover from the allocations. Sometimes you allocate money after the projects are completed. You have leftover sometimes, and then.
Is that the park that was dedicated about 2 or 3 years ago?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So those are some of the reasons where why you don't have why you have some of the leftovers. And sometimes you might allocate money, like Councilor Payne said earlier, due to designs, trying to acquire right-of-way, the project may eventually be placed on hold. For instance, the Franklin sidewalk, if you recollect, for a long time, the design was completed, we were getting ready to go,
So-
and due to the right-of-way acquisition, the project never materialized.
Right, we have a lot of other things. I just don't want to go into every failed, delayed project. So, Lloyd, did you have any other questions?
Well, I would really like to know what this $25,705.78 is for, because it looks like a mistake.
If I could address that. So the three projects that are listed there are projects that were initiated many years ago and have been, according to HUD, closed out. So they're inactive projects anymore. In the city SAP financial system, that money is still sitting in activity accounts. And so this is the format that has been kind of used for a while in terms of the memos. Wherever you see a zero in the proposed revised appropriation, that means that account in SAP will be fully closed out. The one that you're asking about that leaves a $25,000 sum balance, the original, if you add up the proposed reduction and the proposed revised appropriation, that $25,700 is going to be the money that's left over from what was originally implemented in that account.
Okay, so until this happens, it's a 49,000 some odd change.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so we're taking out 23, leaving the 25. Okay. I guess what was confusing to me was how the totals lined up or didn't line up on the page. I got you. Okay.
So if I could just try to also quickly wrap this up with bringing forward what it is that we're doing here. This is cleanup work. That's what you all should appreciate this as. The fact that we're talking about 2017 money right now in 2024 is a sign that we are just trying to clean up the books. We're trying to go back and get every dollar that is currently sitting, because there's too much of it sitting, and bring forward projects that allow us to make the proper investments today that can be done and executed. Many of the projects of the past, we were picking things that should not have been selected because we could not actually deliver them on schedule, which is why timeliness has been the word of choice for Charlottesville with HUD for many years now. So to Anthony's point there, that $25,000 balance there is simply what's still remaining to be spent, and it'll sit there until we find another project to bring forward to clear that account, and then he will come forward and start clearing out any remaining accounts in more recent years that still have a balance in them.
Thank you.
But that was a good question.
Thank you.
I have two very small questions, hopefully. One, you said the project would cost about $350,000, but you're only asking for $215,000?
No, the total project cost will be about $240,000. The $350,000, each refrigeration unit will cost, in total installation, electrical work, everything, about $175,000. So the unit that they paid for about a year ago and the unit that we will hopefully be paying for through this proposal, the combined value of those two would be about $350,000.
Okay, so that included the pass freezer.
So when they mentioned the fact that they were going to extend the roof a little bit to cover the loading dock, we then explored the idea of covering the whole thing to protect a $350,000 investment.
Okay. Okay, great. And then my second question is kind of going back to what Mayor Wade said about other localities that benefit from the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank not contributing. Is there any outreach to them, or how come they're not?
That wouldn't be on us. So that would be a food bank question. That is not like our purview to raise those funds or raise that question. So I saw you about to respond.
So that would be a question for the gentleman here.
But as you said, we also haven't been contributing, so.
Yes, the benefits are manifold.
Yeah, I'm not against this. Please don't misconstrue that. I'm just curious as to has there been any outreach? And because there are people at home, if you do answer, do you mind doing it in the mic? Otherwise, it's not going to get picked up. Thanks.
Thank you. So the reason is the city has the access ultimately to the HUD money that aligns with, the purposes align with this particular project. Because the center of population is here, we see the largest number of people we're serving are within the immediate area, including the urban ring within the county. But the rate of food insecurity is also highest in the city of any of the localities served by our branch on Harris Street. So it's going to provide significant benefit to the city residents, even though there will be some benefit to residents in other localities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So is there a desire to take this to the March 5th meeting, either as an action item or consent agenda item?
I'd say consent agenda.
Agreed.
I second, yeah.
That's consent agenda as well. Thank you all so much
Thank
for
you.
the important work that you do in the community. Thank you.
Have a good
Yeah,
night.
take care.
Are we, Ken, are we still doing item number 8 for the Steve Hicks?
It's on the agenda, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that, if we could defer this item.
Okay, yes. So we're now going to go to item number 9. Alex?
Good evening again,
Good
councilors,
evening.
mayor, city manager. Tonight, it's a request from CRHA. They're getting ready to move into phase 2 of South First Street project.
Can I ask one quick question, point of order? So we're, the item that was on here for the mobile phone company, is that what we're,
And sorry, I'm confused. Why was this deferred?
I'm not sure why
just
we
not
have no
here?
one here to speak to the item, so we can't present it.
Staff, Steve is not here.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
is it, and that's totally cool. Is there something, do we have to vote on that, or is it just something we agree to?
Yes, you're voting on it.
I'm sorry. Do we have to vote to take it off the list tonight?
To amend the agenda.
So, point of order. Council has previously approved its agenda to include this item. It would be appropriate to take a vote if council wishes to continue the item to its next meeting.
I would move that we continue this item to its next meeting.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Thank you, Brian and Jay, for, pointing that out. We do have to vote okay. The motion passes 5-0 to continue item number 8 to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're continue. I'm sorry, Alex.
Okay, sir. All right, thank you, Mayor. CRHA is requesting that the City Council grant approval for them to use the 2026 CIP, committed CIP funding that is in the capital improvement plan to enable them to meet their financing needs for the South First Street project phase 2. The reason why this was being requested is due to cost escalations, among other things, which has driven the estimated cost of staging the project from $31.8 million to $41 million in terms of construction cost. And the total development cost of the project is now at $56.6 million. Just to give council an overview of the project, there are 2 phases to the project. Phase 1, which is completed and has 62 units. I think CRHA is currently working on closing out phase 1 of the project, and they're moving into phase 2 of the project. And the staff report has a critical schedule in terms of staging phase 2, especially with regards to the financing. I believe they are scheduled to the closing for phase 2 on April 1st of 2024. And the current units, existing conditions in terms of number of units is 58 units at this point. And phase 1 has 62 units. And when they have completed phase 2, once the construction work starts going on, at the build-out of phase 2, we'll have 113 units for that phase. And for phase 2 and phase 1, we're going to have a combined total of 175 units, which is a net gain of 117 units. You have a project schedule. Again, the closing is scheduled for April 1st, 2024. And the project is consistent with the comprehensive plan, affordable housing plan, and the City Council strategic visions and outcomes. So staff supports this project. In terms of community engagement process, there has been several engagement processes, especially at the grassroots level. The project is driven by the residents of CRHA neighborhoods, and the CRHA and the city staff, especially representatives from appropriate city departments, have been engaged with the CRA staff and their design teams in terms of the designs, the infrastructure components of the project, and what have you. So there has been an extensive community engagement process involved in this particular project, and that will continue until the project is completed. There are attachments that is part of the staff report to show the City Council of 2020 action granting $3 million for the project. And there is a motion as part of the staff report to approve that CRHA used the 2026 CIP funds to consolidate with the already approved $3 million for a total of $6 million to enable them to support the development of this project. Staff recommendation is approval. With that, I will entertain any question from the City Council. And Mr. Sales, the Executive Director of Housing Authority, is supposed to be here.
He's online.
Tonight, okay. He's online.
Thank you. Are there questions from council?
Michael, maybe you can help me understand this. So there was and Mr. Kafuni, you as well, there was a commitment for $3 million, and that's in the CIP, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And instead of needing 3, they need 6?
Yes, sir.
And this is part of matching funds or whatever that leverages LIHTC dollars and so on?
That's correct. Of the, for instance, of the total development cost of $56.6 million estimated, if the City Council approves the $3 million, then the city's investment in the project in terms of the $56.6 million will be $6 million.
Okay.
So
but I guess, and I did read this, but I may not be remembering. This money would be coming from CIP contingency?
No, it's in the CIP specifically for CRHA.
So it's already there?
Yes.
Okay.
Prior council approved $3 million a year for consecutive years.
I see.
So that was budgeted in the CIP for successive years, and it was then to be pulled down by CRHA to support various projects within their portfolio as they transform them. So what they've done is not used a $3 million pot and now asking to use 2 of those years at one time.
So this is more of a timing kind of sequence
Right.
thing? Okay.
Any questions?
So the total cost is almost $57 million for 113 units?
Development cost, yes.
So-
Overall development cost
So,
is $56.6 million.
and unfortunately, that is pretty in line with trends. Completely unrelated, at the Senate Local Government Committee hearing on Monday, there was a bill about affordable housing, and they discussed the statewide average cost of construction for affordable housing in Virginia is now over $500,000 a unit. That includes your federal funding, state funding, but the average statewide is now over $500,000 a unit.
I think in that line, I think during the COVID, the construction industry, I don't think that has scaled back to date, experienced a huge cost escalations in terms of construction. So I think that is continuing to this point.
And that's units at 0 to 30% area median income. But
So, and it appears as though when I started on council a few years ago, we were figuring roughly $25,000 per unit would be the city subsidy. And now it looks like we're talking about 50,000. Is that a number that you expect that we will see again?
I think
Has the center of gravity shifted that much?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure, and I can't predict whether it will come down, but I know since the advent of COVID, construction cost has been going up, unabated. So I'm not sure whether it's going to come back down or it's going to stabilize. But at this point, it's been a holding state in terms of cost increases.
I don't mean to suggest that this is an issue for this particular expenditure, because I think the plan is already too far advanced, and we're basically having to close it out. But I wonder whether we don't at some point have to look a little bit to say, what are we doing to hold down the costs of individual units? How many square feet are we building these units to? And I don't need an answer right now. It's just a point that I've made before, and I'll make it again.
I've shared it with them. They're going to have that for you in April.
Yeah, that is a lot of money.
Again, that's the state average. Yeah, because we saw a similar cost escalation for the bypass fire station, right? So I think if we're going to look at affordable housing, we should also be looking at bypass fire station and all other infrastructure projects. It is an important question, but it should be applied universally.
Any questions down this end? Comments? Did you have anything? It's not.
No, I mean, I get this is kind of at the tail end of this process, but
Okay.
yeah.
Is there a motion?
This is first reading, I think.
Okay.
I would suggest to put it on the consent agenda for next week, Mr. Mayor.
What's on our agenda is not as a first reading.
Yeah, it was.
It's one reading. It's one reading. I would move its approval. Move the
Second.
resolution.
Okay.
Okay, any discussion? If not, can we vote? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Alex. The next item is Mr. Divers.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, good to see y'all.
Yes, sir.
I'm bringing to you a change to the rental relief program for elderly and disabled folks. This is something that's probably overdue. I hear from a lot of folks in the community who've wanted this to happen for a while, but we just didn't get our ducks in a row, and we're finally doing it. Essentially, what I'm asking you to do is to increase the income limit for folks who can apply for rental relief. And while we're doing that, I want to go ahead and peg it to the median family income parameter that we use for CHAP and for real estate relief for elderly and disabled, so that as those increase with area incomes, then we can increase it on this program as well. That'll have a carry-on effect to the number of the amount of rents that we use in the formula. There's some algebra on the memo that's kind of unnecessary, but it's just a way to back into the maximum rent if we use the income figure that would be using. And then in addition to that, we'd like to raise the cap on the maximum grant amount from $1,500 to $2,000. It's been at $2,000. It was set in code at $2,000 a few years ago, but that had been the de facto amount for about 20 years. So it's high time we go ahead and do that. And I'd like to go ahead and get this stuff in the code. We're getting ready to start the program for this year, so I'd like to just kind of get everything tightened down, and yeah.
How much do you expect that will add to the budget?
Not much at all. This program doesn't cost a whole lot. We're talking $300,000 total. So I'm $5,000. I already built it into my budget request just because I figured this is where we were going.
He knew I was going to ask him for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so are there any questions on this?
Explain to me in detail the equation.
I can. I'd rather not.
Actually, I do have paragraph number 3. You're talking about increasing from 1,500 to 2,000, and then the previous rent threshold being set at 6,000. Can you just tell me what that paragraph says?
So, increase the maximum grant amount from 15 to 2,000. This threshold has not been adjusted in over 20 years. Okay, so when you plug things into the formula, the way it worked, I think it had a $50,000 cap, and then maybe the maximum rents that we used was $6,000 for a long time. If you just did the formula, you just landed at $1,500 as the maximum. And that's just what it was for years and years and years.
The maximum
grant amount.
Per month, per year?
Per year. It's to a qualifying applicant. They'll get a grant in December, a check from the city. And for years, that was capped at $1,500, not necessarily by code, but because of the way the formula worked. The formula is, it's 25% of the difference between the person's income and 24% of what they spend on rent every year. And so if you just plug in a maximum of, or I guess if you plug in a really low number for income and $6,000 for rent, that works out to $1,500 a year.
And so the rent threshold at $6,000, that's the yearly rent.
Yeah, that's the number we use for the formula. We don't we only will look at, there's a cap on the amount of rent that we will reimburse.
Right.
It used to be $6,000, then it was $12,000. We made it $12,000 a few years ago. This is going to increase it again, but it's going to be tied to the income just because of algebra. For lack of a better word.
No, I see the formula there. I'm just trying to figure out how all these are related and what each of the words means in context.
It's, somebody, when this program was started, decided that 24% of a person's income, a person shouldn't spend more than 24% of their income. And the way the formula works is we figure out what that number is. We figure out how much the person spends above 24% of their income, and then the city reimburses the person for 25% of that amount.
Got it.
That's pretty good.
So is the idea of this that it would not that it would basically rise as the AMI rises over time?
Exactly. So
and
you
don't have to come back and treat us to more mathematical equations.
Right.
I think it makes perfect sense, and I would move approval of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion?
While you're up here and we've got a microphone and a camera on you, would you like to tell people how they can find out about these programs?
Love to. Call 970-3160. We'll start taking applications for this program at the beginning of March, and it runs through May 1st. And I'm going to be paying a visit to Afton, see if we can do another little video, do some promo. But yeah, call the phone number. Look on the website, charlottesville.gov/core. But call the phone number if you have questions, 970-3160. Thank you for prompting that.
Okay.
And I do need to ask a point of order. I believe I received an email from Mr. Stroman regarding 2 readings for this item.
Correct.
Okay, so this would need to move to the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Can we move it to the
agenda?
Can we put it to the consent agenda?
Good with me.
All right.
Yes, it would be.
Sounds great.
All right.
Consent agenda for the next one.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is Mr. Sanders.
Yes, before you is purchase and sale agreement for 405 Avon, 405 Levy. This is the last of the transaction steps. As I've referred to this as simply a real estate transaction, I want to continue to frame it as is a real estate transaction. We're buying the property. The goal would be for the city to take ownership of this site, and then we plan its programming to that in our knowing what it is that we have available to us. The next action that I hope to take would be in partnership with the county to possibly retain the services of a firm to help us evaluate what our needs are in a number of spaces, but specifically looking at homeless beds, homeless services, and other supports for our most vulnerable population, in addition to whatever else may come out of the conversation about what a site like this might be able to do for our larger city. So this is, again, $4 million to purchase the property from CRHA, and then we will use the balance of time that remains for us to do whatever it is we need to do to figure out what it is that we want to do with the site.
Yes, and before we get comments, I just want to let the public know I have heard from some residents about this being on the agenda. This government, this city council, and I am personally committed that, before anything's done to that, we will have a public hearing. We will get input on what to do with it. Again, this is just a real estate transaction. It gives us options in the future.
So just one question. So obviously assessments will be done to evaluate potential uses of the site going forward. Is there a known, at this point, when those will be initiated and the hope for conclusion of those assessments?
Not yet. The ongoing conversations that I've been having with the county is that we have each expressed an interest in producing the funds to be able to do that. The goal would be to possibly have that identified by April. And then we will be able to engage probably a national partner in the homeless services space is the thought, and see what their time frame is on when would they be able to come and participate, how would they engage our local partners to then do the assessment work that needs to be done. That's part of what's to be determined.
Okay.
So I would say the earliest, if I can help you with that, the earliest would be late summer, if even then. But that's just more or less a shot in the dark at this time.
Thank you.
And in terms of the appraisal, this has come in within?
Yes, the site appraised for $4,010,000. Our purchase price is $4 million. That was set before the appraisal. And then we asked for 4.181 because that includes the closing costs that we assume are going to also be in association with this acquisition.
Okay. I'm happy to move the resolution unless others have.
Okay.
Second.
Well, let me move it first. I move the approval of purchase by the city from CRHA of 405 Avon Street and 405 Levy Avenue properties.
Second again.
Okay. Further discussion? If not, if we can vote, please. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
I'd like to just add again, on top of what the mayor has said, I too am committed. I know we all are, to whatever happens at this site to be a win for the entire community, as well as for addressing something that's near the top of our strategic plan, which is addressing the issue of the unhoused in our community. And I think that this can be a positive thing for everyone, for the folks in downtown, for the folks in Belmont, if we do this right. And I also want to thank Mr. Sanders. I think this showed some real strategic, thoughtful action, a win-win really for us and also for CRHA. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next item is other business. Councilor, are there other items for consideration that you have, you want Mr. Sanders to follow up on or anything? Okay. We're there at the...
acknowledge receipt of the written report.
Okay, yes. So we have a written report for the integrated pest management report. Are there any questions on this? Okay.
Before you move to community matters, Mr. Mayor, I just want to remind the public, as well as the five of you, that you do have a work session on alternative fuels that is scheduled for next Tuesday. Kimberly Horn will be present, Garland Williams, as well as Crystal Rutherford, our Director of the Office of Sustainability, will all be presenting to you as a part of that conversation. This is a follow-up to the presentation of the study, the alternative fuel study, so that then you can go into more informed deliberations as to what it is that you would like to direct CAT to do. That is still a decision to be made and one that we are looking for your guidance on.
And just to confirm that my understanding is accurate, so there'll be that work session, we'll discuss it, we'll have the staff members present, and then the situation won't be that at the next council meeting that there's a resolution to make a final decision. There's no determinate endpoint. It really comes down to what money we decide to allocate as part of this budget cycle.
That is correct. So I intend to speak to you a little bit about money, since that's what I'm focused on right now for everybody. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that. There is no decision point moment that we have earmarked on the calendar at this time. We're looking for this work session to inform that. Based on what questions that you may still have, hopefully there won't be many that are left. And maybe there won't be any. If that's possible, that would be great, because then I think we would be looking for you to give us some guidance on what it is that you'd like to do next.
So just to confirm, so the goal will be at that work session, we give you direction, and then that will be reflected in this year's budget that we vote on. Okay.
Is that a, I'm sorry, Natalie.
It all depends on what you say, but that's the goal, yes.
Is this a public hearing or just a work?
Just a work session.
Okay.
Just a work session.
Is there, it is included in Kimberly Horn's scope of work, is there anything to help create the pilot program study to help set metrics or determine how to set that up? Or how do we put together a good study, and do we have help with that?
Yeah, I don't think that is in the scope. I could be wrong, but I think we can get that for Tuesday. And no, I believe if we were to engage them further, we would have to then, of course, compensate them for a specific scope of work in that vein. And that's determining exactly what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to go with the recommendation that they have made? Do you want to alter that recommendation, which we're prepared to talk to you about that as well? I think that's still a deciding moment.
Okay, otherwise, if we would do it in-house?
Potentially. I'm not going to commit to that because I don't want to speak for Garland and go
Sure.
too far on how much we can do ourselves. We would probably need some help.
We're now at the opportunity for the public to, public matters, the second round. So if you'd like to come up, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Most of you know I'm Bill Mendez, Chair of the Police Civilian Oversight Board. Unless I had a senior moment earlier this evening, I heard you on this council not appoint any new members to our board to fill the 2 vacancies that we had. And my response to that is, what the heck? I know that there were a number of highly qualified, diverse candidates to serve on the board. I had long understood that this was be the evening when they would be appointed, and assuming I heard correctly and you'd failed to act, I don't understand why. Second, it's been 6 months since the chief of police confiscated our files, thereby making it impossible for the board to do any of its oversight functions. It's been 5 months since we were promised that there would be a standard operating procedure that would allow the chief to share information with the board. We're still waiting. We are being accused of dragging our feet. We are accused of being incompetent, and I'm getting very frustrated. Thank you.
And just to quickly answer the first question, I believe by our ordinance, we have to conduct interviews with candidates. Those interviews are scheduled for March 5th, and following those interviews, we'll make the appointments. So it's because we have not conducted those interviews yet. To your second point, I think is a good question that I also don't fully understand, and I'll leave it at that. But I don't know the answer to your second question.
Thank you very much.
We had to interview candidates for the Planning Commission and the PCOB, and we did the Planning Commission this evening, yes, so.
Thank you very much.
Would you like a response?
Yes.
So in regards to the standard operating procedure that is to be enacted upon my making that decision, I've had the draft. I'm going through the draft as we speak. Reviewed it this morning with my deputy to make sure that I was clear on what I had in front of me was a co-presented document from the chief and the executive director for the PCOB. I believe we are very close to having that done. I hope to, maybe by the end of this week, have a final decision on those procedures as presented to me from the city attorney's office. So we are days away from having this resolved.
Thank you.
Are there other comments from the public? If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you.